So I have this document sitting right in front of me, and I really wish you could see it because it is just fascinating.
Oh, the presentation deck. Yeah, it's something else.
Yeah, it's a 15-page presentation deck, and the visual aesthetic alone just kind of pulls you in immediately.
Stark.
Exactly. I mean, it is aggressively minimalist. It's got this serious, almost academic vibe. The background is just pure, absolute, stark white, like hex code FFFFF white.
No distractions at all.
None. And the color palette is just these really deep navy blues and cold analytical grays for all the data visualizations.
Yeah, they completely banned any flashy 3D graphics or bright colors.
Right. No drop shadows, no clip art, no heavy-handed imagery. It is just pure, unadulterated data.
Which tells you exactly how seriously they want you to take the information.
For sure. And what we're looking at here is a massive, incredibly detailed macro trend analysis. It's focused entirely on the Arab world's structural transformation.
The economic, social, and environmental shifts, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for you listening right now, whether you're an executive trying to catch up on global economics, or you're planning supply chain strategies, or you're just, insanely curious about how societies evolve, our mission today is to cut through all the geopolitical noise.
Because there is a lot of noise out there.
There is so much noise.
Right.
But today, we're just letting the raw, macro-level data tell the story of a region that is undergoing a truly unprecedented transition. So what is the basic roadmap here?
Well, the executive summary of this deck lays it out in a really clean 4-quadrant matrix.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the 4 pillars we're going to examine are, first, the economic and industrial shift.
Right.
Second is demographic evolution. Then third, human capital accumulation. And finally, the environmental and resource constraints.
The constraints, yeah. That's the scary part.
It is. The overarching narrative is basically this massive economic and human expansion that is currently on a collision course with sheer physical reality.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with that first quadrant, the economic engine. Because honestly, before we can talk about anything else, we have to talk about the sheer volume of wealth here.
The wealth explosion is wild.
It really is. I'm looking at slide 3, and it's this dual-axis line chart tracking the region's gross national income, or GNI. And historically, we were looking at hundreds of billions.
Which is a lot of money, but
the chart just skyrockets. It hits over $2.9 trillion. And the text notes this is in constant 2015 US dollars.
Right, so that's a crucial detail. That means it's adjusted for inflation. We aren't just looking at currency devaluation padding the numbers.
Oh, wow. So that is just pure, tangible, real purchasing power.
Exactly. It's a phenomenal phase of wealth accumulation. But what makes this data so compelling is the per capita line on the right axis.
The distribution of that wealth.
Yes. The GNI per capita shows a steady, really significant climb, especially in what the chart highlights as a golden decade of growth.
So the money isn't just stuck at the very top.
No, I mean, obviously inequality exists, but that rising per capita metric represents a massive improvement in the baseline material living standards for the average person.
We're talking better housing, better food, actual disposable income.
Precisely. But, how people are actually earning that money has completely flipped.
Yeah, slide 4 gets right into that. It's a 100% stacked area chart, and it tracks employment by sector. And the big story here is just a complete structural plummet in agricultural jobs.
Farming is disappearing as a primary livelihood.
It really is. The data point that actually made me stop and reread it was the female agricultural employment. It dropped from nearly 50%, half of all working women, down to under 20%.
Yeah, and recent estimates push it even lower.
So why is this happening? Where did they all go?
Well, it's the Great Migration, basically. When traditional agriculture shrinks, whether that's from climate stress, mechanization, whatever, that human energy has to go somewhere.
Right, they head to the cities.
Exactly. They flow into urban centers. The data shows a massive shift towards service and industrial sectors. This isn't just people changing jobs. It is a fundamental rewiring of a civilization from agrarian roots to urban hubs.
I want to pause on that because, we say people move to the city like it's no big deal. But think about the social fabric. Farming is so physical. It's generational knowledge.
It's a completely different way of living.
Right. If the farm is no longer the center of gravity and everyone is suddenly in a high-rise trying to plug into a service economy, what happens to those people?
Well, They have to adapt. Surviving in a city requires a totally different set of skills. You don't just need a strong back anymore.
You need a sharp mind.
Right. You need technical literacy. You need to navigate complex commercial systems. It demands a systemic upgrade in human capital.
Yeah.
And it also requires a totally different physical environment.
Which brings us to slide 11. The infrastructure data here is just wild.
The electrification rates.
Yeah. Urban electricity access has basically stabilized at a staggering 97 to 99%, almost total coverage.
Which is the absolute prerequisite for everything else.
Right. You can't run a service economy in the dark.
No, you can't. That grid powers the telecommunications networks, the fixed broadband, the mobile tech penetration.
The digital economy, basically.
Exactly. You cannot have a modern banking sector or global e-commerce without that grid. It's the new operating system for the region.
It is honestly like a fast-forwarded industrial revolution.
Oh, totally.
I mean, in Europe, that transition from farm to electrified city took, what, over a century? And here it's happening in just a few decades.
And that compressed timeline is exactly what puts so much pressure on the human capital we were just talking about.
Right, the people. Which gets us into segment 2 of the deck.
Yeah.
The human capital miracle. And calling it a miracle is not an exaggeration.
No, the data on health and knowledge is just breathtaking.
Seriously, if you isolated these slides from the rest of the world, you'd think it was the greatest developmental triumph ever recorded. Let's look at slide 7. The literacy leaps.
This is a step line chart, right?
Yeah, comparing adult and youth literacy. And historically, the adult literacy was abysmal, under 50%.
Literally half the adults couldn't read.
But the chart shows it jumping up to roughly 80%. And the youth literacy, this is for ages 15 to 24, it has broken the 90% barrier.
For both men and women.
Yes, both men and women.
What's fascinating here is how quickly they close that specific gap, the gender gap.
Slide 8 covers that perfectly. It's tracking the Gender Parity Index, or GPI, for primary and secondary school enrollment.
And just for the listeners, a GPI of 1.0 means absolute perfect equality between boys and girls.
Right. And the historical baseline on this chart is down at 0.6, meaning, for every 10 boys in a classroom, there were only 6 girls.
A massive disparity.
But the trend line climbs relentlessly. It's approaching 0.95 now.
It's essentially eradicated the gender gap in basic education.
That is just incredible. But it's not just that they're smarter. They are also living way longer. Slide 9 has this 2-line scatter plot on life expectancy.
Ah, yes, the health metrics.
The leap is crazy. It goes from an average life expectancy of under 50 years old, which is just grim, to over 71 years today.
And the women are nearing 74 years.
Right. But slide 10 explains the why behind that jump. It's this dramatic waterfall chart showing infant mortality taking an absolute cliff dive.
Yeah, it dropped to fewer than 30 deaths per 1,000 live births.
Along with huge drops in under 5 mortality. The notes say this is due to vaccines, prenatal care, better hygiene.
Well, what's fascinating here is the compounding effect of these metrics.
What do you mean?
Okay, so think about historical agrarian societies. When infant mortality is high, families typically have a lot of children as an economic hedge. Right?
Because you need the labor, and you don't know how many will survive.
Exactly. It's a harsh reality. And because survival is a gamble, the amount of resources you can invest in any single child is low.
You're spreading your bets, essentially.
But when modern medicine guarantees that your child will likely survive into their 70s, it fundamentally alters your behavior.
Oh, I see.
You are naturally incentivized to invest heavily in their education. You'll send them to school for 15 years because you know they'll live long enough to use that education.
That makes total sense. The health upgrade fuels the education upgrade.
Exactly. The data proves a historical leveling up of the region's human baseline.
I really want you listening. Just picture that for a second. Imagine a society going from half its adults being illiterate to virtually all of its youth reading, writing, and living decades longer in the span of just one lifetime.
It's profoundly successful.
But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit dark. We've got the healthiest, most educated, most gender-equal generation in the region's history.
The hardware is built.
Right. So what happens when this massive wave of capable youth actually hits the job market?
Well, that leads us right into the demographic double-edged sword, slide 5.
The youth bulge. It's a population pyramid, right? The 15 to 24 age group is highlighted in this really deep blue, and it is massive.
It is. The broader working age population, 15 to 64, has risen to over 60% of the total population.
Which is supposed to be a good thing, right? The demographic dividend.
In theory, yes. A demographic dividend is the economic boom that should happen when the vast majority of your population is of working age.
Maximum labor capacity equals maximum wealth.
Exactly. But it only works if the economy actually employs those people. And this is the paradox.
Okay, slide 6, the dumbbell chart. This visual is just brutal.
The labor paradox.
Yeah, it shows the gender gap in the workforce. Male employment is sitting pretty high, around 65%, but female employment, it's staggeringly low,
It hovers around 15 to 17%.
with just a tiny, microscopic upward trend recently. Wait, let me just wrap my head around this.
Go ahead.
Girls are going to school at the exact same rate as boys. They're over 90% literate. They are living longer than the men, but 85% of them aren't formally employed.
That is what the data says.
If I'm looking at this purely from an economic data perspective, isn't that a massive amount of stranded economic potential?
It is the definition of stranded capital.
Mm-hmm.
This raises an important question, right? They've built the human capital, but the economy is completely failing to absorb them.
But wait, push back time. Let's think about the timeline. We saw agricultural jobs collapse. Women went from 50% farming to under 20%.
Right.
So they left the farms, moved to the cities. Isn't this just a lag? Like a generational delay? You don't just go from plowing a field to writing code overnight. Doesn't the economy just need 20 years to catch up?
It's a popular theory, the transitional lag, but the data for this region specifically suggests it's deeper than that.
How so?
Because the velocity of the educational gains has massively outpaced the evolution of the labor market structure.
So the school's upgraded at fiber optic speed, and the job market is still on dial-up.
That's a great way to put it. The bottleneck is the inability to convert female education into female employment. It's a mix of regulatory barriers, lack of childcare infrastructure, and cultural expectations.
Wow.
And it is the single biggest barrier to inclusive economic growth in the region. You cannot run a modern economy at peak efficiency with only half your talent pool on the field.
And they desperately need to be at peak efficiency because we are hitting the final quadrant, the physical,
The limits.
the collision with Earth.
Right. Slide 12, 13, and 14. This is where all that growth starts to demand a toll.
The environmental cost.
Slide 12 shows the carbon cost. It's this gray bar chart overlaid with a dark blue trend line, and it is aggressive.
Per capita CO2 emissions.
Yeah, climbing from roughly 2.3 tons up to over 4.5 tons per person. And the notes say it's driven by power, construction, and transport.
Well, think about what we just discussed. A 99% electrified urban grid in a region with extreme climate.
Air conditioning.
Massive amounts of air conditioning. Plus energy-intensive water desalination because fresh water is scarce. Every time a new citizen plugs into that grid, the carbon footprint compounds.
The carbon is atmospheric. It's global. Slide 13 is what actually terrifies me because it's so local and immediate.
The arable land squeeze. Yes. It's a reverse line chart, trending ominously downward. Farmable land per capita plummeted from 0.4 hectares down to a startling 0.13 hectares.
That's a severe drop.
And the designer actually put this cold gray shadow on the chart with a warning about carrying capacity alerts.
Because it's an existential threat.
But okay, push back again. If everyone moved to the cities to work in the service sector, like we said, why does shrinking farmable land even matter? They aren't farmers anymore.
True.
If your GNI is $2.9 trillion, can't you just buy your food from somewhere else?
Well, you can, and they do, but food security is the bedrock of sovereignty.
Okay, elaborate on that.
You cannot run a modern digital economy if you are entirely vulnerable to global food supply chain shocks. A
Right.
digital worker still needs to eat 3 times a day.
Right, so if global shipping lines freeze or there's a drought in South America.
You're completely exposed. The combination of rising carbon footprints, vanishing arable land, and a surging urban population creates a pressure cooker.
So how do they fix it? Buy better technology. Vertical farming.
Yes, but that requires massive capital. You need foreign money, foreign expertise. Which brings us to slide 14,
The capital fluctuation.
the foreign direct investment, or FDI, chart.
It's this volatile bar chart. It shows these massive historical peaks, like over $100 billion flowing in. But recently,
Yeah.
it's just flattening or declining.
Right when they need it most.
Why is the money stopping?
Capital requires a streamlined, transparent business environment. If the region wants to fund its green transition and manage these resource constraints, they have to attract global investors.
And investors hate risk.
Exactly. They need regulatory modernization to match the physical modernization.
Yeah. So what does this all mean? We have this incredible triumph of health and education, totally balanced against the terrifying math of carbon and vanishing land.
Well, slide 15, the final slide, acts as a roadmap. It outlines 3 non-negotiable pillars for the future.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, human capital monetization.
Breaking the gender barrier.
Yes, they have to unlock women's economic potential. It's not just a social goal. It is a macroeconomic survival tactic.
Right. You can't leave 85% of your educated women on the bench. What's pillar 2?
Economic diversification. Moving away from single resource reliance. Using that 99% electrical grid to build resilient digital and service economies.
Getting off the oil standard, basically.
And the third, the green transition. Managing the severe math of doubling carbon emissions and shrinking farmland. Upgrading agriculture, expanding renewables.
That is a massive to-do list.
It is. The region's future depends entirely on balancing all 3.
You know, for you listening right now, whether you work in global finance or climate tech or you're just a citizen of the world, this stuff matters.
It matters deeply.
Because the Arab world is basically acting as a real-time laboratory for the 21st century's biggest challenges. Transitioning from fossil fuels, managing a youth bulge, adapting to severe climate constraints. They're doing it all at once.
And the outcomes will ripple violently through global supply chains and geopolitics.
Exactly. But the thing I just keep coming back to, the thing I want to leave you with, is that labor gap. We saw the data.
The stranded capital.
Yes. There are millions of highly educated, perfectly capable young women in this region sitting just outside the formal economy. It's a reservoir of human potential that is practically unprecedented. So just mull this over. What happens to the global economic balance of power on the exact day that massive invisible dam finally breaks and that ocean of untapped human capital floods the global market?